I'm kind of like a proud parent, even though I'm not your parent. It's really cool to watch you guys. I don't know what the pandemic has done to you, but it's like a whole new vibe in here. It's really beautiful. It's super, super, super beautiful. I'm so excited to just see all of the enthusiasm, all of the networking, all of the different things that have been happening here. It's just really, really, really super beautiful to watch, and so I'm thankful for that. God is looking at first, before I start, I always listen to the messages, and, I've been in Long Beach caring for my dad, so Pastor Ali, I'm sorry I didn't get to listen to your message until recent, and I tell you what, it was really absolutely beautiful. It has a lot to really speak to what I'm going to speak to today. And thank you so much, Jackie, for just honoring the healing that you're doing. It's really beautiful. Beautiful to hear your messages. You guys are knocking it out of the park. It's absolutely fantastic. God is looking for people to worship him with your whole heart. He's looking for wholehearted worshipers. He's looking for wholehearted people that follow what he's telling you to do with a whole heart, just a pure relationship with him. And we're going to look today at a character in the Bible, a very famous character in the Bible, super popular passage. I like to use those, I'm not sure why. But God's going to bring out something that we don't always look at. In the book of Joshua, chapter 14, verse 6, if you could, turn with me there if you have a Bible. It says, a delegation from the tribe of Judah, led by Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, came to Joshua, and Caleb said to Joshua, remember what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, about you and me when we were at Kadesh Barnea. You see, what's happening here is they're portioning out the promised land. And Caleb and Joshua were the two spies that actually got it right. And even more than that, Caleb was the spy who said, when all the other spies were inciting fear and creating all of this stir, Caleb was like, no, don't fear. We got this. But one thing that you don't know maybe is that Caleb's name means wholehearted. Is that he was wholeheartedly in everything that he did. And 40 years prior to this, Moses, the leader of the nation, had asked him to go in and to spy out what was happening in the land that they were promised that they would get. They were promised they would get this land. And all they had to go in was to go and look at the land, look at the people, look at all the resources, and not to make necessarily any judgment, but just to go and see what's there. And when they got to the land, they saw that there was giants, and there was, I always laugh when I create, people always call us giants. My husband and I are above 6 feet, 6'4", right? And it's funny to me when people say, man, your feet are so big, you wear size 13. I'm like, dude, can you see me with a size 6? I'd be like falling over my face, right? And so when they come out with this giant fruit, it feeds giant people. So it makes total sense that there's giant fruit in the land of giants, right? And so they probably have big shoes, probably bigger than size 13. And so you guys got to be kind to tall people. It's just part of who we are. We're not necessarily mean, but we do take up a lot of space. But in this case, these were giants. And so when the spies came back, two said, hey, you know what? We're all in. Let's do this. We got this. God promised this. We're all there. Their hearts, can you imagine 40 days being with people as you're watching them, the 10, they might be now kind of not feeling like this is going to be a good thing. And there's two of you, and you're like, wait a minute. This looks fine to me. And you know what's interesting about Caleb is that if he's named wholehearted, that means that's who he was created to be. A person who wholeheartedly followed the Lord. Wholeheartedly. All the way through. And so when everybody is giving all of the reports that aren't positive and all the reports, he's wholeheartedly saying, no, let's stay focused to God. And so what's happening here is 40 years later, here he comes with a delegation of people. You know, what's interesting as I was sitting here watching you guys. You came through a pandemic. You're coming through it. And you're coming with a delegation of joy. It's like people are just rallying around this thing and ready to be back in. And Chris is like so excited and he's so thankful and he's so all of these things. And God was creating something in the midst of that pandemic. For whatever reason, when you came back here, you came back with enthusiasm, you came back with joy, you came back just being excited to be together. You always have that there, but there's something new. I don't know, there's something fresh that's happening here. And so when he comes back with a delegation, Moses, he's having a moment with Joshua. He's saying, you know, do you remember what Moses said to us? You ever have that moment with people that you live life with? And you get to a point and you be like, man, you remember back? This was 40 years. And so legitimately, 40 years of wandering, they could have forgotten. But it was such a defining moment, I bet you Joshua said, yeah, I remember. I remember what the Lord said. And so what's happening here is he comes back 40 years later. They have this moment. They're set looking right over the land that they could not enter because of the faithlessness of the other people. And he says this, I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land of Canaan. All they were supposed to do was to go north into the hill country, see what the land is like, see what kind of land they live in. Is it good or bad? Do the towns have walls and so on and so forth? You know, God wasn't sending them there to spy it out so that he could now figure out his game plan. God was sending them there so that they could see what was in their own heart. Because when they looked at the things that were grand and huge and powerful and all of those things, and God had already promised, he wanted to see, would they come out in fear? Would they follow his plan? Would they be wholehearted followers based on what the Lord was leading? And what came out of their heart was fear. You know, God's really cool about this. He lets us see our hearts. And he knows where we're going. And he knew that they could not enter the promised land with fear because there were giants on the other side. They had to wholeheartedly trust what the Lord was leading them to do, who they were, what they possessed, and their legacy that they lived from. But they didn't. They had gotten challenge after challenge after challenge to do that, but they still feared. And they couldn't enter to the other side of the promised land because there was giants in the land. If they would have gone there in fear and they looked at what they were comparing themselves to, they would have instantly been overtaken. Do you know, when you look at and compare yourself to other people and compare yourself to giants and compare yourself to other things, you diminish God. You diminish God. Because God's not asking you to do that. He's asking you to be wholeheartedly you 100% of the time, to know who you are, to know what you possess, and to know where he's calling you to, and to trust him that you are the masterpiece that you were created to be, always 100% of the time, and if he's taking you there, he's going to provide all the access for you to do it. But we look at the land, and we look at Pastor Greg and Pastor Wendy, those tall giants in the other land. And we see how big their feet are, and they think, wow, they're so big, they're so tall. You know, just a side note, tall people are pretty gentle. I'm just saying, you know, I'll just throw it out there. All you people that have short persons, you know, fear. But this showing them of their heart was not for, when they came back with that thing, it proved who they were. 2 people wholeheartedly trusted God. 10 people did not. And we know that. Common story, so we're not going to camp there for a long time. It says, I returned and I gave an honest report, but my brothers who went with me frightened the people from entering the promised land. For my part, I wholeheartedly follow the Lord, my God. You know, Caleb was the one who tried to calm the fear. And it's interesting. He not only said he wholeheartedly followed the Lord, but he actually was living out his name. Right? Some of you have had some fantastic things said over you. Some of you know who you are. Some of you really understand following the Lord wholeheartedly. That's a cool thing. But there's going to be times when you face opposition. And there's going to be times when being who you are is not necessarily the most exciting thing in the room. I was at this event the other day, and I had to give this view that might not have been accepted too easily. And I gave it out there, and I just waited. And everybody's staring back at me. You know it's on Zoom, so you can make your screen blank if you want. And I waited. And I waited. And there were definitely power players in the room that if they said it was going to be good, it was going to be good. And if not, it was going to be really bad. And it could have gone south fast. And one by one, all the power players in the room began to say, that sounds good. That's a really good idea. We should support this. We should put this out among the churches. This is something we should do in the city of San Francisco. We're talking about historic change for homelessness, for housing issues. And so sometimes who you are is not always the most thrilling thing in the room. You're going to face opposition. You could be the one that has to quiet down all the other people's fears, like Caleb. And so, but don't question who you are. Don't question what you've been called to. Don't question the things that are most important. If God is leading you, stay wholeheartedly to those things. Because the reality is that God is doing something. You know, there's sometimes when we know the right thing, like Caleb did, and the team that we're on, they don't want to go that direction. And we know that the thing that we're saying is true. And we know that there's going to be consequence if people follow the other direction. And if we're on the team, we're going to be a loyal team player, and we're going to stay on the team, so when we have the consequence, they have the consequence. Do you know Caleb had to wander for 40 years before he could get to the land of promise? And so sometimes we have to be part of the team that we know is not necessarily going right. But what is the cool thing that God does here? Is that he, at that moment, he pronounces to Moses, the leader of the nation, that these two people have followed wholeheartedly, and when they get to the promised land, you give them this land because it is the best land. And so God tells the man who was declared the trusted one. There was a big thing happen with Moses, and God said, no, I don't want to hear your voice. I trust him. So the trusted one is the one who declares to them that, yes, you were wholehearted. And not only were you wholehearted, but I'm going to give you the land that you're going to get that land because you trusted me wholeheartedly. But unfortunately, you got to walk with all these other people. Now, here's the kicker. This is the part I really love. Because God did a miraculous thing with me this week. I don't know if y'all ever heard the song Symphony. Yeah. Because even in the darkness, there's peace. Drowning out the voices and the chaos and the different things, right? At that moment, when God says, you followed me wholeheartedly, you will get this land, what happened is all of the other voices silenced. And he was raised up as the man to follow because this is the heartbeat of God. And so sometimes when your voice is not the most excited voice in the room, but you know it's right, stick with it. Because what ends up happening is you look in the first verse, he had a delegation with him. Which means that when they traveled through the wilderness, and God did miracle after miracle after miracle of relationship, that Caleb's voice was one of the most profound voices in the nation. That he was so profound now that he went there at the same point where he lost all connection with people because of his view. He now can take a delegation back of people that believe just like him. They walked through the wilderness and their shoes didn't wear out. 40 years, that's a long time. I don't know about you, but my shoes wear out after about a year or two because I got such big feet. No, just kidding. Just kidding. And so what's happened is at that moment, when everybody else fell away, Caleb's voice was risen because he was true to who he was, because he knew what he possessed, and he also believed in a God that would take him all the way through. He lived through 40 years of consequence with people. And people of that generation, while they might have died out, they must have told their children, you follow that dude because he was right the first time and he knows what he's talking about. And when he goes back for the land and you're in his tribe, you go with him. And so his voice impacted a generation. Do you not know that there's sometimes that we might not be able to receive the things that we think we would want, but that our generations that follow, we set it up for them to follow into it. Like we could have had dreams. And because of our life circumstances or our choices or whatever it is, those dreams can't be realized for us. But that doesn't mean that we can't set the way up for the people that follow us. And so the delegation that's going in there with Caleb, those are the children of the people that made the worst choice ever and never got to see the promised land. But their children did. And they must have set it up for their children to be able to follow Caleb and said, follow that guy. And so God has defining moments where he raises our voice. And a lot of times it comes in opposition. And so we need to stop looking at the obstacles and the negative and all of the different things in a negative way. Because what the Lord did for me driving down 19th Avenue from the bridge towards your church one more time is that he said, I'm creating a symphony. Because even in the darkness, there's peace. And then he began to say, you know how people talk about the wilderness and how people wandered all this time. And it was such a negative thing. And we talk about wildernesses and we learn so much in the wilderness. God is creating a symphony in the wilderness. He's getting the people to follow the cloud, which is meaning they're wholeheartedly following his voice. He's providing for them food so that they trust that he will provide. He is appearing in a cloud so they know when to move and when to not move and to follow. He's creating a symphony of people that have made horrible choices so that when they get to the promised land, they are now the delegate of people that get the best land. That get the best land. And so God is creating a symphony. I tell you, Hope Ministries, I heard that song over you. That God's taking things, however you feel they are. You see them as broken. I don't. You see things as wilderness. I see it as God creating a symphony. And he's creating a symphony. He's taking things that legitimately could have been discarded. And he's creating this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful music that is going to speak to the nations. Oh my gosh. I got this picture, but I just have to say this because it's not leaving me. And I didn't intend to say this to the end. You know, I got my time. But I saw you guys singing up here. And while you're not a huge group here, no disrespect to that, I just saw thousands of people listening to you. And I don't know if it's through the internet. I don't know how it's happening. They weren't in this building, but I just heard the voices going. I know someone in El Salvador is listening right now. So the Lord is creating a symphony. You see, when Caleb went into that land, he saw with eyes of the Father. And what happened is, while everybody opposed him and he lived through the consequence, he now is poised upon the land to see the point of contention that everybody feared. And he's standing there with Joshua right now. And he's saying, do you remember that? Yeah, dude, that was the most defining moment of our life. We lost everything in one shot. He said, yeah, but do you remember what God said about us? Yeah, he said, you were wholehearted. And he also said, you would get that land. So Caleb says, me and all these people with me, we want that land. I'm 80 years old now. I'm 80. Dude, he's old, My mom's 86, my dad's 91, and I just think to myself, I don't know that they would ever go into a land and fight the giants that are in there. He wanted to fight the toughest giants. And granted, time is different in this period of time. People lived forever. They 800, 600. You see all these numbers, you think, holy cow, that's not possible. That's insane. You're like, I'm good at 80. But what he said was this. He said, that day, Moses solemnly promised me, the land of Canaan on which you were just walking will be your grant of land and that of your descendants forever because you wholeheartedly followed the Lord my God. We've been talking a lot about legacy for the last 4 weeks. It's been woven in and out. The way you live wholeheartedly now will impact generations of people. It really will. It really will. I am dealing with my father right now, and it's very challenging to me and my sister. And I tell her, every time you lay down a brick of love, you are changing the trajectory of the unfortunate realities that we had to go through. And our children will not have to live through that any longer. You have to think like that. You have to think like that. I know Pastor Allie talked about it. I just listened to it yesterday, but it's actually 3 weeks ago. She talked about how when you pave the way, you pave it for the generations going forward. You really, 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 really do. And you can see it here in this book. Caleb, he lived wholeheartedly, and it affected all the generations going forward. You'll see it in a minute. It says, now you can see the Lord has kept me alive and well as he promised for all these 45 years since Moses made the promise. Even while Israel wandered in the wilderness, today I am 85 years old. It's crazy. There's a scripture in 1 Peter, it says you've been something about being saved for your eternal inheritance. But the reality is that you need to know that God keeps you alive for promises. And he keeps promises alive for you. Right? And so if he's promised you something, don't lose heart. Don't lose heart. Not everybody has to wait 40 years. But the reality is that he will keep you for the promise. There's things that God showed me a long time ago that are happening right now. And it's been about 40 years. But the reality is I'm so excited to step into it because now I can appreciate it. Now I can appreciate it. The thing that's interesting is that God creates a symphony. And then when I was on doing this message and asking God, okay, give me the heart of this, he reminded me of something I saw. I watched this show. I don't even know what it's called. It's called The Greatest Race or American Race, where they have all these people that race against each other all over the world. I don't know what it's called. I just happened on it and looked at one season. It's like season 32 or something like that. But one of the places they stopped was in the nation of Paraguay. Sorry, I just said it the English way. And they happened upon this symphony where the people there, they rummage through the landfill and they find discarded things and they make instruments out of it. And so when you feel like you're in a wilderness and you're watching these various things, we're going to show it. Actually, why don't you go ahead and show it? And let me know if I need to yay or nay.
Mi nombre es Ada Maribel Ríos Bogado, tengo 13 años y toco el violín.
Me llamo Juan Manuel Chávez, más conocido como Baby. Tengo 19 años y toco el cello. Este cello está hecho de una lata de aceite, la madera tirada en la basura y las clavijas son de una vieja cuchara para golpear la carne y para hacer el ñoquis. Y suena así.
Una comunidad como Cateura no es un lugar para tener un violín. De hecho, un violín cuesta más que su casa.
En ese grupo acá mismo encontramos el colado de violín. Y de ese empezamos los instrumentos reciclados. La familia que acá vive recicla todo lo que hay en la basura y se vende. No pensaba antes que yo voy a hacer ese instrumento. Y me siento demasiado feliz cuando estoy viendo a un niño que está tocando un violín reciclado.
Cuando yo escucho el sonido del violín, siento como mariposas en el estómago, así una sensación que no sé cómo voy a explicar.
Bueno, la orquesta de instrumentos reciclados es una orquesta que toca instrumentos hechos con la basura.
1, 2, 3.
Y mi vida sería... Sin la música estaría increíble.
La gente se da cuenta que no tenemos que tirar la basura muy fácilmente. Y no tenemos que desechar a las personas muy fácilmente.
Can you imagine being the person who started that? To take people who everybody else had cast away, that were living in the wilderness. You know, I've actually been to a landfill where there were houses. What they don't tell you in this story is that city wasn't even created until the trash was put there. And the city built up around it because the people went to look for valuables in the trash. And one guy takes the trash and makes instruments because he's an environmental scientist. And he takes families. And these kids have been all over the world because of one man's vision. I don't know if you've ever been to a trash site. The smells are incredible. The mounds of trash are astronomical. It is the most humbling, sobering thing I've ever done in my life. And to see the people living in the squalor and making this their home, but also being able to take that resource and to be able to pull out the beauty that they see among the trash, and to be able to create a symphony. One man with a team of people changes the course of life for the children of this region, and this town is known the world over. This was 2012. They had people sending them instruments. They have been in the United States. They have been all over Central and South America. They have been all over the world playing with instruments of trash. You have to be who you are. You have to know what you possess. There's one of the grandmas, she found this thing for free lessons. And so she said, you know, I always wanted to be a singer. I always wanted to play music, but if I can't do it, my granddaughter will. And that's the girl. And she's been all over the world, and right now she's being trained by one of the most gifted guitarists in the world. All because one person went against what everybody else was saying. Everybody else was calling them trash pickers, and now the name for them is called recycle. I don't know, they have some recyclists or something, I don't know. They changed even the way they're described because of the beauty that was brought. God is creating a symphony with you. He's creating a symphony. I didn't even remember that story when I first got that song, and when I matched it together, I was like, God, this is so fantastic. You are creating a symphony in the wilderness. When they're traveling in the wilderness, and we look at it like it's this horrible thing, and we look at it, all these things, we are forgetting that you are leading. We are forgetting that you are providing. We are forgetting that we are learning how to trust. We are forgetting that we are learning to be wholehearted people following the Father. You have to be wholeheartedly following. You guys have heard enough messages. You've seen your leaders heal and find hope and really invest their energies into their own hearts being wholehearted. You're the delegation. You're the delegation. They're teaching you. They're coming in front of you. They're telling you, let's follow. Be the delegation. Because you guys are going to step into some amazing points of history that were scarred for whoever they were scarred for. And you're going to be the delegation that can say, I'm 80-some years old, but let's go. Let's be all in. I'm all in. I'm ready to take it. Because that's what happens here. I am as strong now as I was, verse 11, when Moses sent me on that journey. And I can still travel and fight as well as I could then. So give me the hill country that the Lord promised me. You will remember that as the scouts, we found the descendants of Anak living there in great walled towns. Those are like Pastor Greg and myself. But if the Lord is with me, I will drive them out of the land, just as the Lord said. I trusted the Lord then, and I trust the Lord now. 40 years later, I don't know how I'm going to do it. They're big as they were then, and they're big as they are now. But me and the delegation, we're going for it. When you compare yourself to the giants in the land, you diminish God. When you diminish God, you can't make claims like that. When you're wholehearted, and God tells you this is where you're going to go, you go and crazy, amazing thing. An 85-year-old dude is ready to take on the giants in the promised land. Oh, that's the kind of heart that a wholehearted person can have. So fantastic. That's the kind of heart Flavio Chavez can have. He must have been an amazing person to be able to see the vision of that symphony. That symphony. God's creating a symphony. Verse 13 and 14. So Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron to him as his portion of land. It still belongs to the descendants of Caleb. Still belongs. Why? Because he wholeheartedly followed the Lord, the God of Israel. And it was called other things. It says, and the land had rest from war. So not only do they still own the land, but they also are resting from war. They have no war. That means they have peace 100% of the time. The symphony has created peace for generations. Your wholehearted decision creates peace for generations. For generations. You got to know who you are. You got to know your name. You got to know what you possess. You got to trust God. And you got to lead from that place of what he tells you to do. So many of you are gifted in here. So many gifts in here. Karina, when I was sitting over there, the Lord told me to bless favor over customs designs. So release right now generational favor, generational blessings over customs design. Lord, unlock the things that are bound. All the challenges that come against that business, I pray right now, release of freedom over it. I pray for financial blessing. I pray for accounts that they know not of. Lord, just pour them down right now. I pray for generational favor and blessing over custom designs. You're going to change the trajectory of that family, that history, that lineage. Lord, start now. Start now. Start now. Start now. Start now. God's creating a symphony with customs designs. I'm not sure I understand this one, but for the lady over there, I just saw you with a satchel, and I just saw a whole bunch of letters inside, kind of like on the Pony Express, and I just saw you firing out the letters. I don't even know what it means. I just feel like I have to deliver it. That's funny. I feel like I have to deliver it. It's a pun. Yeah, there you go. Dry sense of humor. I don't understand it, but I kept seeing it. I kept seeing it. I kept seeing it. Yeah. Ken, you're going to be at a table. There's some table talks that you're going to have in the next weeks. You've been on my mind. I told you that when I first walked in, but I get a sense that there's an art of the table that I can help you with, but you're going to be at some table talks with people. There are going to be influential moments of talking at tables. What I mean by that is this: when you sit down at a table, all kinds of business happens at tables. All kinds of business happens at tables. I get a sense that your voice is going to be really powerful. I don't know what the table is, but there's going to be a table you're going to sit at with people that are powerful, and you are going to have some real clarity and influence in that table. I feel very honored to be in your presence today. I feel like God has done something with you from a little girl all the way till now. I felt it when I was talking with you. I don't know, I feel like there was some choice you made as a little girl about God. And God sees you. I feel like God told me a while before I went to Singapore, right before I went to Singapore, the Lord says, you're going to learn about people who are royal. He told that to me. Are you translating this, Gloria? Where are you? Yeah, right on. Bless you. You don't have the camera shaking like before. That's got to look, you get seasick while you're watching a baptism. Oh, that's pretty funny. Anyway, yeah, even though the thing's stable, you're like, anyway, yeah, I was laughing. Anyway, whatever. And God told me royalty doesn't always look like what I think it looks like. So when I was in Singapore, there was a lady that was cleaning our tables, and she was of darker skin, which in Singapore actually means that you're not as valuable. And the Lord said to me, that lady's royal. I was on a bus, and I saw this little kid, and he was a visitor from like somewhere where he had an English accent. And the Lord said, that kid's royal. And I began to pray things for him. God's saying that about you. You're royalty. You're royalty. You're a woman of honor. You're a woman of honor. There's a crown over you, and God's asking you to step into it. I don't know that you've always believed it, but it's true about you. And sometimes God says things about us that help us understand our name and who we are. God's saying that about you. While you just made a decision to step into Christ and to be baptized, there was a halo of honor around you a long time ago. When I stepped into your presence, I told you I feel honored to be with you. I felt honored because I felt the honor that you carry. God's saying that you're royalty. That you're royalty. He's speaking it right into your soul. I feel like we're having a moment. That's funny. We had a moment earlier, but we're having another one. Yeah, bless you. Bless you. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. I keep seeing you as a little girl. Can someone help me understand, did you have conversations with God when you were younger? Yeah. God heard you. Yeah, God heard you. A lot of us do. So I could have thrown that out. That's like those people that say, "Yeah, did you wear blue?" Of course, yeah, But I just could see that. So I just felt like God not only heard that, but He honored. There was something you asked Him when you were little. I don't know what it was, but I get a sense that God really wanted you to follow Him all those days. And I see you in just this beautiful little outfit, and you're just sitting there talking to God. It's cool. It's cool. Customs designs, it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. It's going to be a voice. Yeah. There was something else. I think I gave the church one, right, where I said about the standing here and seeing the different things. God is so pleased with you guys. He really is. He's asking for your whole heart. He's asking for courageous, whole heart people. He's asking you to live your name. I really believe, Pastor Ali, like I said to you, that there's going to be a curriculum that comes out of here as it relates to legacy. You guys are going to be people that talk about legacy in the culture that you're from. You're going to call out legacy from people, and it's going to be something that you guys create. You will create it. It will come from a place of healing, and it'll come from a place of inner transformation so that people can really live the destiny. She's just one of the people that's royal in your presence, but you have a lot of gifted people here in this house. And so God is going to unlock those different things and the gifts in this house in such a way that that legacy thing is there. I had this picture for you, and I kept asking God, is it for a message or is it for just Pastor Ali? And Pastor Ali, I'm just going to give it to you, and it may be a message, but I'm going to give it to you right now because it came back to me again before I came. You know the story of Jethro, where Jethro comes to Moses, and Moses is there all day, and Moses is dog-tired, and he also brings back his wife and children, and there must have been some rift there. And the Lord said to him through Jethro, you know what? Why don't you train all the different people? Why don't you train all the different people? And why don't you set up all these other people to do different parts of the different ministry and the different things? And when they do that, then you'll be able to do the things that you're supposed to do, and they'll be doing the things that they're supposed to do. And that group of people will be valuable on the parts that they're valuable. So so you don't burn yourself out. The Lord is saying that to you. The Lord is saying to you, you all are the team. She is the leader. But the reality is that just like Jethro said that's got to happen in this house. Not only does it happen, but it's already happening. It's already happening in this house. But that's a story that you should read over. Yeah, that's a story you read over. Because Moses had a direct call. And his call wasn't to do everything. And so that could be why your heart feels so burdened by everything, because that wasn't never meant to be what God was saying for you to do. And so the pairing out to the other people is actually really healthy. And I keep getting that for you. I actually was going to be a message, but the Lord's like, that's not a message for Pastor Ali, just deliver it. So I just went and just did that. So bless you with that. We can talk more about that another time if you're interested. But it's the story of Jethro when he comes to talk to Moses after Moses spends all day doing judgments type things. I just want to bless you guys. God's creating a symphony. There's no wildernesses like we think they are. In the wilderness, God never loses a relationship with people, ever. And so the symphony is coming. The symphony is happening. And God is creating that symphony. Amen.